So
Sounds like drugs.
deep fake is essentially putting a real person or entity right in a using artificially generated creative such as video, photograph, audio, right, to represent that person or entity doing something that he or she did not really do, right? That's a deep fake. Synthetic creative is using artificially generated videos, images, potentially audio to create advertising that also didn't really happen, right? Like, I mean, in other words, it's a purely synthetic. You're taking likenesses and products and putting them into different contexts for hyper segmentation, personalization, etc. So the big difference, right? So the process is kind of identical to create deep fakes and synthetic creative. The distinction there is intent. It is in synthetic creative, are you representing products and people accurately as plausible situations, plausible use cases for your products, realistic scenarios, realistic outcomes of the benefits of using a product, et cetera, right? So there's definitely, I'm not equating deep fakes and synthetic creative, but I am pointing out the obvious elephant in the room that the technical details of deep fake content and synthetic creative are identical. Get ready to deep dive into the world of digital transformation, where we explore the latest trends, innovations, and challenges shaking up industries. Join us as we decode the secrets behind successful digital strategies and hear from experts who are at the forefront of disrupting the status quo. In each episode, we'll unravel the mysteries of the digital realm and uncover the hidden opportunities that lie within. From artificial intelligence to blockchain, from automation to cybersecurity, we'll leave no digital stone unturned. But hold on tight, because this podcast isn't your average tech talk. We're injecting a hefty dose of wit and humor into every episode, making learning about digital transformation an absolute blast. So if you're ready to embrace the digital revolution with a smile on your face, tune in to the Digital Disruption Podcast and get ready to be entertained, informed, and inspired. Don't miss out on the fun. Subscribe now and join us on this wild digital journey.
Right? I think. Yes, we are. Hello and good morning.
Good evening, Daoud. How are you doing? Feels like it's been
All,
about 2 weeks since we chatted or something.
I think it has been like a couple of weeks, yeah. Last time we we had like the ever philosophical question of does the does the ideal stack exist? And if you take one tile from a ship, is the ship still a ship? Fun times.
Yeah, did you have an enjoyable Eid?
I did, yeah. It was nice, short and sweet.
Nice, good. You stuck around, you didn't go traveling?
No, I just
Yeah,
stayed at home.
right on. Good deal.
All right. So what's happening on your end of the world?
Sure. Yeah, I thought today we'd sort of revisit. We've talked about artificial intelligence and machine learning on a few contexts on the podcast. I wanted to, I guess, talk about the ethical, legal, and regulatory landscape. We said that regulations around AI are coming to the extent that they didn't already exist. We said that several months ago, and we're seeing in Colorado if there ever was a pioneering state, that'd be Colorado. They were among
Really?
the first to legalize marijuana in the U.S., and I guess now they're among the first to have a uh, artificial intelligence regulation. So we have recently passed the Colorado Artificial Intelligence Act, and it will go into effect in 2026. So there's a little bit of time to prepare for this. We'll see if maybe there's a federal US regulation in the meantime. Certainly, there's been lots of mullings in the EU region around AI regulation. I mean, we're not by any means anti-technology on this podcast, and we're not, um,
We're not
trying.
anti-technology. I thought we were anti-technology.
but but we also aren't just blind, sheep, kind of following the trends and fads without proper attention to risks, ethical considerations. We try to keep our moral compass uh, somewhat intact in these interesting times. And I think artificial intelligence is a sort of a broad umbrella, right? It includes so many possible use cases, everything from like making chatbots, quicker to respond, more intelligible, and, more quickly getting you information you might want as a consumer, about the status of your order, or quickly making a refund, or, allowing a customer service agent to retrieve the best um, documentation when they're on the call with you. So to quickly, utilize something like retrieval augmented generation, right? Or RAG to quickly get you the information you need to solve your problem, right? There's a whole, but those are like very, what do you want to say, benign, though very helpful use cases. And then of course, when we get into the level of deep fakes and
Yeah.
also what the euphemism in the advertising world for deep fake is called synthetic creative. Um, so
Sounds like drugs.
deep fake is essentially putting a real person or entity right in a using artificially generated creative such as video, photograph, audio, right? To represent that person or entity doing something that he or she did not really do, right? That's a deep fake. Synthetic creative is using artificially generated videos, images, potentially audio to create advertising that also didn't really happen, right? Like, I mean, in other words, it's a purely synthetic. You're taking likenesses and products and putting them into different contexts for hyper segmentation, personalization, et cetera. So the big difference, right? So the process is kind of identical to create deep fakes and synthetic creative. The distinction there is intent. It is in synthetic creative, are you representing products and people accurately as plausible situations, plausible use cases for your products, realistic scenarios, realistic outcomes of the benefits of using a product, et cetera, right? So I'm not equating deep fakes and synthetic creative, but I am pointing out the obvious elephant in the room that
Yeah.
the technical details of deep fake content and synthetic creative are identical.
They are,
So
unfortunately, they
yeah.
are.
So now and then, the other area where various forms of automation. Let me try that again. Automation. uh, various forms of automation of processes that are more and more using um, AI and ML, based platforms. So this would be streamlining the processing of, financial information applications. Some of this would come down to like decision making around like healthcare services, housing, insurance, legal services, government services, lending, I believe I already said, employment, and education opportunities, right? So in the Colorado AI Act or Artificial Intelligence Act, they have identified what they call high risk AI systems. And these are AI systems that are actually um, either partially or wholly making decisions around those different categories I just mentioned. I'll say them again just so you kind of have an idea, but you should check out this law for yourself. But it's education enrollment or opportunities, employment or employment opportunities, financial and lending services, essential government services, healthcare services, housing, insurance, and legal services. Now you'll see, so some of these categories you already see as considered sensitive categories, like say in Google's own advertising policies. Most of these categories fall in there. So certain kinds of remarketing and personalization are not possible because of some of the same concerns. But this law, so the Colorado law is really focused around this idea, this jargon they've come up with of algorithmic discrimination, right? And so the idea being that these models, um, they're only as good as the data that's included. Two, the algorithms themselves we know can have implicit biases built in that people didn't account for, not because of nefarious or malicious reasons, though that's certainly possible as well, but they also can just have unintended consequences, right? So because of that, um, there's a feeling that there needs to be this regulatory landscape in place. I'm kind of fairly middle of the road. I'm not a huge proponent of like, the quote unquote nanny state, getting involved in every possible um, commercial enterprise or technology platform and making regulations. But in this case, I'm convinced there's sufficient risk that I think this is an interesting move, an important one potentially. Um, and yeah, let's kind of dig into the details a little bit because it will impact different entities, organizations differently. There's two burdens imposed by this law. One is on developers of these high risk AI systems, and one is on the deployers. So, just if you purchase a third party system and deploy it in your own operations on your website, etc., you're not absolved of risk. So the developers, one thing is, it would so it would behoove you, if you're a developer of these systems, to understand how it applies to you, and if you're somebody who's considering or already deploying these systems, it would behoove you to understand what the burdens on you are as well, right? So I guess let's start with the deployers because those are going to be the areas where consumers mostly interact with in some capacity. But you have to have there's a transparency requirement, which is you must have a statement disclosing the purposes, the intended use cases, the context in which you deploy these AI systems, what are the proposed benefits, and what are the potential risks. If there are actually reasonably foreseeable risks, you do have to disclose those as well. And specifically risks of this idea of algorithmic discrimination. And then you also have to disclose if there have been any mitigations that you've put in place, if there have been any actual incidents of this that you know of using this system, Again, how you've mitigated those risks. You have to provide a description of the data categories that are processed as part of the inputs and how the system outputs data. Um, if you've customized the system yourself, if you've taken an off-the-shelf solution and then customized it, you have to give the same level of transparency about the customizations you've done. Um, what else? Transparent. You actually have to describe your own transparency measures related to that system. So you actually have to uh, explain how you have attempted to proactively notify and make consumers aware that you use these systems. And then you also are responsible for post-deployment monitoring and safeguards. So, like, what human oversight is there? Like, what learning processes are in place to address issues as they pop up, et cetera, right? You have to have some transparency around that. So, um, you can contract those services out to a third party to actually do these assessments for you. This does need to be filed with the attorney general's state's attorney general. So you actually have to provide that impact assessment along those dimensions that I just mentioned within 90 days of a request from the attorney general. They are not publicly, so to the extent that proprietary, like if you're worried about like um, divulging proprietary information, those reports, they're not like publicly um, disclosed under the Colorado Open Records Act. So it's not like people are going to be giving away your, the secrets of your AI system when you file these reports. So there's some protection there around your own um, proprietary, your intellectual property. Um,
So does this affect people outside of Colorado?
well, that's an interesting question.
Yeah, because we have like a CCPA and other like laws
Yeah,
that are not about AI, but they are like state exclusive kind of thing, like they are state laws. But we see lots of tools that follow these kind of uh, like laws, not to get in trouble. Um, so I was wondering, like, do you think would that this law would not apply on a federal state? That's not the not you know I think that's not foreseeable, not doable in the foreseeable future. But does it affect businesses and like vendors of AI in other like areas other than Colorado?
I think I honestly don't know the answer to that offhand. Like it certainly does if you're a business. So if you're a business entity located in Colorado, a developer of these systems or a deployer of these systems, it will cover you regardless of if you're like if you have an e-commerce site, for example, so maybe you have customers all over the place. Like, I mean, this law is going to cover you if you are an entity in the state of Colorado, right? So
Hmm.
what I don't honestly know the answer to the question of it's not clear to me, like say, uh, similar to like I'm a company based in New York, but I have California, a sizable number of California customers. Therefore, I do need to comply with CCPA, CPRA requirements on my
Yeah,
website. That's not really up for debate, right? But in this case, I don't. It's not clear to me in the law
it is a bit
language. I think
early.
lawyer, yeah, but so
I
it'll be
think it's a bit
interesting to see
early
how.
for anyone to have like insights, but some people maybe have like I think we will find people across the spectrum. Some people would say absolutely it would affect. Some people would say absolutely it will have no effect, and then you'll have people in the middle. I do believe that, it's how you react, how do you react to it would be the most important question. I do tend to lean towards that it might actually affect people outside of Colorado, like CCPA does for privacy and stuff like that. It's not gonna be huge like the GDPR, so you'll not have the wrath the wrath of the European Union on your head.
Yeah,
But
well, there are, yeah, well, quickly that's coming in the EU already if it hasn't already been passed, but I haven't been following it quite as closely, but no, I think so. We talked about the deployers, the developers themselves also have a big burden. So if you are a
yeah,
developer of these systems, you have very similar disclosure requirements around the risks, the types, especially the types of data used to train the system, the foreseeable, known and foreseeable limitations of the system, risks of algorithmic discrimination, the purposes and intended benefits of the system, right? Really any other information, to kind of meet the obligations of the act, how the system was evaluated, mitigation, uh, data governance, around like the training data sets, right? Examine like how was the suitability of the data determined? Again, any selection biases, different data biases, sample bias, and how was that mitigated? Again, the intended outputs of the system, because deployers are going to be the ones utilizing this technology, there also should be like very explicit um, transparency around how the system should be used, how it should not be used, how it should be monitored by individuals, um, especially like when very consequential decision making is involved. And then really as much context as possible for the deployers of these systems to understand how the system works, the inherent risks for discrimination, and then how those risks can and should be mitigated. Um, you know, Requirements around, clarity of documentation and comprehensiveness of documentation. Um, there's also for on websites, interestingly, there's a component here that's not related to high risk systems and just uh, companies, websites, applications that are utilizing AI in ways that would not be immediately obvious to a reasonable person. Um, that also must be disclosed to people. So if you're using AI in ways to maybe in driving how you make recommendations, personalizations, uh, if you're doing synthetic creative, um, you're actually required to disclose that. I think, the immediately obvious use cases would be if you are on a generative AI website or application, and you're clearly using AI as part of your, interaction, like, intentionally using AI. I don't think there's an additional disclosure needed under
yeah.
this law. But so no, it's very, very interesting. Um, it's certainly a new regulatory layer that, I mean, certainly the digital landscape, we're all going to have to be aware of these. I think there's something in the works in California in this regard already as well. That's probably shortly to follow, not surprising. Yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's an experimental kind of regulation, and it will pave the way for lots and lots to come. I think that other states would be keeping an eye on other um, regions, like the EU should be also keeping an eye on. Um, they'll see how things react, and definitely it will have like interesting consequences because I think that AI has been running loose for a while now, and it does need to be tamed a little bit. But I think, as you said, it is a little too early to actually quantify, measure what is gonna be the impact, but it would be interesting to keep an eye on to see where all this leads, because I think that it will change the digital
Mhm.
landscape tremendously, like AI did.
Yeah, I mean, the adoption curve on these different, I mean, different tools and capabilities that this is unlocking, it's pretty staggering when you just sort of see the growth of the market capitalization of like the underlying technology, NVIDIA being maybe the biggest example, but
Oh,
other
yeah.
examples for sure, right? This trend is not going to reverse anytime in the near future. It's going to become more embedded. I mean, and in fact, most of the AI that people are using, it's being utilized in embedded ways, right? Where you um, either knowingly or unknowingly, right? You're already getting, in an advertising platform, you're getting insights delivered to you that are, utilizing um, sophisticated models, right, to deliver those insights, optimization algorithms, again, the ability to sort of, generate at scale and speed this kind of new world of quote unquote synthetic creatives, right? All these things, your average user isn't developing those applications. You're simply utilizing them as embedded features in platforms that you're already in, right? Consumers are already seeing things delivered, as digital experiences that are being driven by these new capabilities. Again, whether you are aware or not. So I mean, personally, I favor more transparency over less transparency. I also don't favor the increasing like sort of narcissistic, self-reflexive world like that will take,
Yeah.
social media and put it on steroids. Where pretty soon your digital experience is just going to be this kind of like uh navel gazing, always looking at yourself reflected in every content and interaction
Uh,
online. It'll be gross when it gets to that point, but yeah.
it should be interesting to keep an eye on, but yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Um, Pretty soon we'll all be narcissus just gazing at ourselves in a pool of water. Frozen our pool of water. This will be anyway.
What a world we live in.
Anyway.
Well,
Anyway.
I think that that's it for this episode, but I think that we should be keeping an eye on to keep on like to give an update to how does everything react to everything that is happening, especially with the Colorado and then the upcoming EU, because I think that would have much bigger impact and it should be very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's it. I guess I'll see you next week, Patrick.
All right, sounds good. You know what? You're gonna pretty soon, maybe next month, maybe by next month, there'll be an application where you can take your favorite action movies and you can replace the action star with yourself in throughout the movie. So you can just watch yourself as the protagonist in every hero story you ever imagined.
Um,
How cool will that be, Daoud?
that would be terrifying ankle.
Roger Ebert says, thumbs down. That will be
Oh,
awful.
that would be
Anyway,
all very awful.
it's probably already I mean, it is already technically possible. Thank God I have not seen it in the
I
wilds
hope I
yet.
don't. Imagine yourself like and like starring in No Country for Old Men. Jesus.
Oh man, yeah,
Oh my God.
yeah, no
Oh
kidding. Yeah,
Lord, no.
I know, I know, I know. It'll have to be the death of empathy and identification, right? Because you would only have to empathize with yourself and identify with yourself. You have no, it'll be the total death of empathy and the ability to relate to others.
Oh, jeez, no. Bone chilling, bone chilling.
Anyway, I'm of course exaggerating, but talking about the risks always brings out the cynic in me.
I mean, imagine it for a second, and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Anyway,
it is what it is. What you can do.
but we should. I mean, obviously, it's a little bit tongue in cheek too. But no, I mean, these tools are unlocking a lot of possibilities for doing our jobs more efficiently and effectively, streamlining processes, helping automate processes. I mean, all those things are definitely benefits. And like I said, I mean, they're not going away regardless of what anybody thinks of them. So I think it's weighing the risks and the benefits and kind of taking a little bit of a sane approach here. So
If we can.
if we can.
And if we can, we should next week. The Digital Disruption Podcast.
All right. Well, good to talk to you as always. Yeah, sounds good.
See ya.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. And that's a wrap for this episode of the Digital Disruption Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the world of digital transformation and gained valuable insights to help navigate the ever-changing landscape. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us on our website, e-CENS.com, or connect with us on social media. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and stay tuned for more exciting discussions on the forefront of digital innovation. Remember, the future is now, and it's time to embrace the power of transformation. Thanks for listening, and until next time.